Welcome everyone here in the hall today and those who are joining us online. I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of this land, the Kaurna people. I extend my respects to their elders past and present. Further extend my respects to traditional custodians of the lands throughout this nation. Acknowledge their ongoing connection to country in its fullest sense. And part of that fullest sense of country is something that we will be discussing today. Whilst we have a pretty full community hall, it's always good to do these things in community halls because volunteering is about community. It's about the individual and it's about the collective. We also are joined by around about 700 people online representing organisations, individuals and organisations, many of whom have contributed to the development not only of the National Strategy for Volunteering, but of course of the action plan that we will be launching today. I'd like to acknowledge also that a number of both board members and staff members of the state and territory volunteering peak bodies are joining us either in person or online. There are many notable people and I would be taking up a full hour to mention them all. I appreciate everyone's attendance today. Today's event is a celebration of volunteers. It's a celebration of volunteering, and it's an opportunity for us to launch the action plan which attends, gives voice to, and provides a pathway for the implementation of the national strategy. For this strategy and for the action plan, it's a culmination of the work of thousands of people throughout this country, each of whom have contributed in a really meaningful way to the development of a strategy, which is not Volunteering Australia's strategy, it's your strategy. And it's something that you collectively and individually will take forward for the next 9 years. Of course, we're talking about the next 3 with respect to this particular action plan. So whilst this is the launch of the action plan, it's not the only opportunity for you to engage. There will be a lot of opportunities to engage around what the action plan is, how it works, and how you can be involved in it and be part of it as we move forward. So the running of today is I'll be handing over to Minister Rishworth very soon. We're thrilled to have the Federal Minister in the room with us today, assisting in the launch of the national strategy. Minister will provide some opening remarks. I'll hand off to Zach Reimers, who's the National Strategy Director. He'll present the action plan and give a bit of life to this thing that we've been working on. We'll have a panel discussion after that, and then we'll get into saying some hellos offline. So without further ado, Minister, I'll welcome you to the stage. Ladies and gentlemen, friends, Minister Rishworth.
Well, thank you so much, Mark. It really an absolute pleasure to be here. And I would like just to acknowledge your really important role in the development of the national strategy and this action plan. I would like to acknowledge the traditional owners and the custodians of the land in which we're meeting today, the Kaurna people, and pay my respect to elders past and present. And I am really, really pleased that I'm able to be here for the launch of the first 3-year action plan of the National Strategy for Volunteering 2023 to 33. And this is a long-term vision, and I think that is really important. Why are strategies important? Because they're long-term visions that we can all work together on, and I think it's really important. But this strategy is really important because it also values and celebrates the fundamental contribution that volunteers make across Australia. Of course, we all know, as a local member, as so many people out in their communities, volunteers are in every organisation, around every corner, doing their bit, very often very unassuming, very quietly, but making a huge impact to local communities. People often say volunteering builds communities, but I think it's much more at the core of communities. It is communities. What is something that really binds us together. Now, we know that volunteering particularly has had some challenges of recent years, particularly during COVID. We saw, I think, really COVID be a rupture in the volunteering ecosystem and the landscape, where many people stop volunteering for a range of different reasons, including, of course, having to stay at home, but also concerns about health. And we haven't seen the number of volunteers come back and participate in the way perhaps they used to. And so that's why I think this strategy and this action plan are really, really timely. Whether it is being time poor, offering balancing work and unpaid care, cost of living pressures. These are all things that are having an impact. But what I think the strategy does is set a very clear pathway of how we not only build back the volunteering ecosystem, but really enrich it and make it something that is even better than it has been in the past. And that's what I feel is incredibly exciting. One of the areas I think that we are really focused on is how we encourage more people to take up volunteering and supporting the right conditions for volunteering to thrive. And I think what is highlighted in the strategy, of course, is supporting the different ways people can volunteer. Looking at those people in our community that may have had barriers to actually participating in volunteering and making sure we're looking at how we break down some of those barriers. And some of the local examples I've heard on the ground when those barriers are broken down mean that actually you don't just get perhaps one or two people volunteering, but you get perhaps a whole community coming and volunteering that you may have not had involved before. So I think there's a huge amount of volunteering. Volunteering's always been very close to my heart, and some people may have heard me say this story before. I haven't always had a good relationship with volunteering. I think as a child, I was a little bit jealous of the fact that volunteering took up my grandmother's time so much. She wasn't available to see me on Tuesday mornings because she was doing Meals on Wheels. She wasn't available to see me on Thursday afternoons because she was volunteering at Flinders Medical Centre. She was in the local Progress Club and participated in so many different areas. And so I got a little bit annoyed from time to time. But once again, the role model that she provided for the appreciation of volunteering, it was as a teenager that I signed up to the local Surf Lifesaving Club. I became a volunteer swimming instructor and took the areas that I was really passionate about and translated that into volunteering. And that's certainly one of the other messages I think across the volunteering strategy is how do we harness the passions that people have and allow them to contribute to whether it's in different times, different ways they want to volunteer. How do you harness that interest and passion to actually translate that into volunteering opportunities and then great outcomes for our community? Of course, we were really proud as the Australian government to fund the national strategy. And as Mark indicated, a huge amount of work went into that, a true example of good co-design. And I'd like to thank Volunteering Australia and everyone who contributed to the development of that vision for a reimagined future for volunteering. We could wring our hands, I think, and saying that we're losing volunteers, but Volunteering Australia and the work you did along with the volunteering community made it really clear that you wanted to see a long-term collective vision and direction for volunteering. Of course, today we are not just having a volunteering strategy that sits on the shelf. Of course, strategies can sit on the shelf if you don't actually turn those strategies into action. And today we are all gathered here today to launch the first 3-year action plan and affirm our shared commitment to working in partnership to realise its vision. Of course, the action plan includes 22 concrete actions to achieve the national strategy's shared vision and desired outcomes. And of course, as Mark has indicated, this won't be an action plan that once again will sit on the shelf. It will evolve over time and people continue to have their say on what needs to happen next. But I'm really pleased because this action plan is a partnership. It is a partnership with the volunteering community community. It is a partnership with Volunteering Australia, and it is a partnership with government. And I'm really pleased to say that our government will commit to leading 7 of the action items in the action plan that are the responsibility of government, including a national advertising campaign to raise awareness of volunteering opportunities for young people. What we've noticed in our research, and we've been researching a lot into this, is that we do need to get young people to stop and have a second look at volunteering. That's coming out very strongly in the research, and I'm really pleased that we will be rolling out a campaign later this year, really focused on encouraging young people to have a second look at volunteering and then directing them to places they can take up those volunteering opportunities. Because we know if we get them early, and I know this is something a number of you in the room have said and have demonstrated, if we do get them early, even if they take time out of volunteering, they will often come back to volunteering. And so that has been a real focus of us. My department will also lead a scoping and development of a whole of Australian government approach to volunteering. And this may include the creation of an interdepartmental forum to encourage collaboration, knowledge sharing, and improve the policy settings to create the conditions for volunteering to thrive. That will have the opportunity to really, rather than just sit in the Department of Social Services, really have the opportunity to encourage the settings throughout the whole of the Commonwealth through Commonwealth programs and the Commonwealth Public Service. So I think that is incredibly exciting. And we will commit to working with states and territories to encourage them and work with them for better alignment to the national strategy. One of the challenges is having different states and territories and the Commonwealth. This strategy gives us the opportunity to be all pulling in the same direction, and I think there's a huge opportunity there. Of course, we'll also always be looking at how we can better align our programs with and funding around the national strategy. But also, I'm really pleased that both the Australian Sports Commission, through the Play Well and the Sport Volunteer Coalition Action Plan will align with the national strategy. The National Office for Child Safety will progress greater national consistency of working with children checks, and the Australian Bureau of Statistics will collect and publish new official national data on volunteering. So this is another example of how what we're able to leverage through the Commonwealth in other departments as well. We'll be able to assist with the national vision for volunteering, but also start to properly account for and include in the national conversation the importance of volunteering and what important role it will take. So, and not only through that, but of course, my department will continue to work with volunteering organisations across the country, along with states and territories, about how we can best support you. I think, lastly, the action plan does acknowledge that volunteering involving organisations are required to upskill organisations to look beyond their traditional volunteer through removing barriers for people to volunteer who may have additional structural barriers that may have previously discouraged them from taking on opportunities. And I really wanted to do a plug. This is an area that we have worked very hard on in my department, but also across the states and territories, is particularly in the area of disability. We know people with disability, in particular, find really significant barriers for work, but also volunteering opportunities. Many have spoken to me about wanting to get the opportunity to volunteer and to be included. And so I would encourage, as we do through Australia's National Disability Strategy, to look really at that inclusion piece, particularly for people with disability, and how we might be able to better include them in volunteering experience. But look, just in conclusion, I would like to again thank Volunteering Australia and the whole volunteering ecosystem for charting a way forward for a thriving Australia through volunteering. The initial 3-year action plan presents us, I think, with a really exciting opportunity to start taking the strategy off the page and bringing it into a reality, into our communities, through our country. I don't believe, and I would say this very strongly, I don't believe the decline we've seen in volunteering is because people have stopped caring, because people don't want to contribute to their community anymore. I think that is still absolutely as alive today as it was previously. And through us working together with this strategy and with this action plan, I think we have the opportunity to tap into that wanting to care, wanting to be involved in community and actually take it into a reality. So thank you for having me here today.
Thank you, Minister. Thank you for your personal ongoing support of volunteering and the volunteering ecosystem, that of your office, and of course, the ongoing and continued support that we have from the Department of Social Services, especially with respect to creating that connection across government to support volunteering throughout Australia. Thank you again. Friends, I will call to the stage Zach Reimers, who's the National Strategy Director, to present the action plan for the National Strategy. Zach.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us, both in the room and to the hundreds of people we have joining us online. It's fantastic to bring so many people together from across the volunteering ecosystem and from across the country. And on that note, I would also like to pay my respects both to the Kaurna peoples and the land in which we're joining today in person, and to the land from which you're joining all across Australia in our online event. So the National Strategy for Volunteering. The National Strategy for Volunteering was created through an extensive 12-month co-design process, and it was launched in 2023. It provides a 10-year blueprint and national strategic framework. There's a clear and compelling case for change to achieve a better future for volunteering, underpinned by robust data and evidence. And this is underpinned by also 3 focus areas and 11 strategic objectives that people can apply to their volunteering practice to strengthen volunteering and to form new collaborations and partnerships. And indeed, many have already done so across the country in advance of what we're talking about today, which is the 3-year action plan. The vision of the National Strategy for Volunteering is that volunteering is the heart of Australian communities. So let's focus in on that vision. Volunteering is the heart of Australian communities. This was the result of the co-design process with input from people across the volunteering ecosystem. And we can think of it as the light on the hill for the 10-year roadmap of the national strategy. But how do we actually achieve that vision? An important thing to note is that the National Strategy for Volunteering is co-owned by the volunteering ecosystem. We have a shared responsibility and a shared opportunity to participate in the national strategy. It's not gate-kept by any particular stakeholder. It's not directly controlled. It's accessible, it's open, it's out there, and many have used it to strengthen volunteering outcomes already. When we talk about actions to achieve the national strategy vision, we can think of broadly 2 forms of action. There's coordinated action through the 3-year action plans, one of which we're here to talk about today, and also actions taken independently across the volunteering ecosystem. This highlights that each member really does have a role to play in creating a better future for volunteering, and both forms of action are vital to the implementation of the national strategy. The National Strategy for Volunteering, it uses a phased approach. It outlines 3 action plan phases, and each are co-designed to reflect the needs of the volunteering ecosystem and to identify key priorities. Now, we are at the transition from the establishment phase into the first 3-year action plan phase for the national strategy. So let's focus in on that 3-year action plan. How is it created? Like the national strategy itself, it emerged through a co-design process with the volunteering ecosystem. Many people in this room participated throughout that co-design process, and I'm glad to see you here today, as well as those online. So we can split this up into 2 phases, broadly speaking. The first is the ideation phase. There were public workshops, there were one-on-one consultations, learning from those who are already using the national strategy to enhance their volunteering practice. There were workshops at the state and territory level. We also went back and revisited the workshops from the development phase of the national strategy. Now, all of this resulted in over 1,600 ideas being submitted of what people wanted to see in terms of action and also outcomes from the first 3-year action plan. Now, that's a lot of ideas, and it's fantastic contributions from all across the ecosystem. But we then need to go through a process of refinement to distill that down, to identify the key priorities and to identify the most valuable, practical, sustainable, and transformative ideas that have emerged from that process. So through that refinement phase, we also had the engagement and support of the establishment design team. So this was a fantastic group of dozens of people giving their time generously, each representing a different stakeholder, a different perspective, a different region, all different parts of the rich tapestry of the volunteering ecosystem from which we all join. This was also supported by National Strategy for Volunteering staff through Volunteering Australia. The ideas that emerged through this process were then tested with key stakeholders across the volunteering ecosystem, those who would lead actions and sign up to commitments and bear responsibility to progress those actions, to ensure progress, to ensure that the national strategy is being implemented across not just the 3 years of this action plan, but then looking ahead to the remaining 9 years of the national strategy of its 10-year roadmap. And we also have a governance body, the National Strategy for Volunteering Council. So this is a group of people who use their strategic insight to provide advice and guidance on the governance of the national strategy, ensure that it is fit for purpose and of a high standard. And so they review the action plan, the other supporting documents that come out of the establishment phase, and give strategic advice, highlight new opportunities, and also decide whether to endorse the action plan. And that all results in the 3-year action plan. I do want to give a special thank you to everyone who contributed throughout this process. It would not have been possible without your vital contributions. There were diverse opinions and perspectives representing all forms of volunteering all across Australia, and this has enriched the national strategy, the action plan, and produced something that could not have been produced in isolation. It's only through this broad participation, this wide collaboration, that we're able to achieve the national strategy for volunteering and identify that we each have a role to play in its ongoing implementation. I especially want to thank the members of the establishment design team, the research working group, the state and territory volunteering peak bodies who assisted with state level workshops and participated in workshops themselves, and everyone who contributed their thoughts, their opinions, their perspectives, and generously gave their time to share those with us throughout this process. I spoke before of the National Strategy for Volunteering Council, and I wanted to share a quote from the council chair, Doug Taylor, who's also CEO of the Smith family. Doug notes that we are very proud that members of the volunteering ecosystem have come together to develop this action plan. It represents a collective commitment to taking action to achieve a positive future for volunteering. And he highlights that there are opportunities for everyone that lie ahead as we progress the action plan and implement the national strategy for volunteering. And so here it is, Action Plan 2024 to 2027, the first 3-year action plan of the National Strategy for Volunteering. It's live online. I encourage you to download it, to look at it immediately after this event, to pore through it, but I'm going to give you an overview now as well. So what's in this action plan? There's a suite of 22 actions, and this includes commitments. The minister highlighted that there are federal government's departments and agencies leading actions. There's also the actions being led by the state and territory volunteering peak bodies. There's the National Strategy for Volunteering Research Working Group, Volunteering Australia, and Justice Connect. There are also supporting actions throughout the action plan. This is one of the most important things that came up through the co-design process. The minister highlighted that there are challenges facing the volunteering ecosystem. And we know that volunteers everywhere rise up in the face of a challenge, but it also means that some are in a situation where they are unable to make a 3-year commitment upfront. We know that one of the ongoing trends in volunteering is the need for greater accessibility and flexibility. being able to offer opportunities for people rather than always requiring a commitment. So the action plan reflects this as well. There are commitments from lead stakeholders to ensure that there is progress, to give accountability, shared responsibility, and to identify and clarify what is happening through the action plan. But there are also more flexible, accessible opportunities for stakeholders to participate. So you will see through the action plan that there are actions led by identified lead stakeholders. These are complemented by supporting actions, accessible opportunities to participate in the action, to share it with your networks, with your colleagues, with your community, or to benefit from the action, to apply the outcomes of the action and its outputs to your volunteering practice to strengthen volunteering. No matter what your role, there is an opportunity for you to be part of this action plan 2024 to 2027 of the National Strategy for Volunteering. So let's talk about what those actions are. There's 22, so there's quite a list to go through, and that's one of the strengths of the action plan is that we have this broad suite. So I've joined them together in a few themes here, and these are themes that emerged from the co-design process. These were priorities identified among those 1,600 ideas that came up of what people want to see, and here are the specific forms of those. The numbers on the left, if you want to look it up in the action plan document, that's the number of the action. You'll find them in that order in the document, but I've grouped them here by themes. Now, throughout the action plan, there are actions that address each of the 11 strategic objectives of the National Strategy for Volunteering, which is split across 3 focus areas. So we have here actions grouped around the theme of building and sharing knowledge. One is to produce and implement a survey to measure and track the volunteer experience nationally. Focusing on the volunteer experience is one of the strategic objectives of the national strategy, and it's one of the most important things that we can focus on in volunteering, especially for volunteer enabling organizations and for leaders of volunteers, to ensure the volunteer has an accessible opportunity to participate and a positive experience, bonding with others, building, learning, working together. Now, this action is being led by Volunteering Australia. This survey will be shared around, and when I talk about the supporting actions earlier, that's an example. When the survey is out there, accessible, available to use, if you want to survey the volunteers that you work with, that you engage, or take the survey as a volunteer, you can now compare yourself on a like-for-like basis with others who are using the same strategy to share those results for interstate compatibility, to get some perspective on the volunteer experience, and to potentially contribute to a building data set that would help track the volunteer experience over time. Or you may just want to apply it within your team in isolation for your own purposes. And this is an example of how the actions within the action plan can be applied flexibly in different elements of volunteering. We can see as well that as a research translation initiative, people may be familiar with the 3 tranches of the Volunteer Research Papers Initiative that have come out and produced valuable insights and findings shared by the research community, especially through the ongoing work of the Research Working Group. Also collecting and publishing new official data through the Australian Bureau of Statistics, which the Minister highlighted earlier, and establishing a research agenda for the National Strategy of Volunteering for its ongoing journey in the 10-year roadmap. There's also alignment of policies and strategies. There are policies that enable volunteers, that apply to volunteering, and that help define our volunteering practice. There are also long-term strategies, and we would seek alignment between these. So these are actions that touch on this theme: alignment of Play Well and Sport Volunteer Coalition Action Plan, greater consistency of working with children checks, a whole of Australian government approach to volunteering, alignment between state and territory volunteering strategies, which is encouraged by the Department of Social Services, and appropriate alignment of federal government funding for volunteering with the National Strategy for Volunteering to enhance strategic outcomes, strategic planning, and consistency. Sharing the story of volunteering is Perhaps the most common idea that came up through the co-design process. People know that volunteering is part of the human experience. It's part of our experience in communities. And one of the things that often inspires people to volunteer is knowing someone else who volunteers and hearing their story and connecting with them. So this is an essential part of the action plan. We have here establishing a mechanism to channel the voice of volunteers into policy and practice, a national and ongoing Share Your Story initiative, which people may have engaged with the Share Your Story campaign through National Volunteer Week. There's a national campaign to raise awareness led by the Department of Social Services, communicating the value and impact of volunteering, and hosting a public conversation on approaches to informal volunteering, volunteering taking place outside of the organizational hierarchy. Volunteering tools and resources is another theme that emerged through the co-design process, and these are actions that touch on that. So there's increasing volunteer involving organizations' understanding of their legal obligations to ensure that volunteers are increasingly protected and supported as they are engaged. Developing a national volunteering passport, delivering essential platforms of tools and resources called the Volunteering Gateway, and aligning the implementation of the national standards for volunteer involvement with the national strategy for volunteering. The national strategy also enables collaborative networks and partnerships. Indeed, it's been doing so even through the development phase before the national strategy was released. This priority is reflected in the actions as well. So we have actions here to host forums, to enhance collaboration and knowledge sharing, to create new community-led volunteering partnerships, to listen to communities about volunteering opportunities and projects of mutual benefit, to establish an employee volunteering community of practice, and to support the national strategy for volunteering by acting as a state and territory ambassador. They'll be sharing the national strategy and encouraging its use with your networks, expanding existing networks, and bringing people together. That was a whistle-stop tour of the action plan. As you can see, there's quite a bit in there, and that's fantastic to see the number of actions, the number of commitments that have been made, the number of leading stakeholders that have stepped up and made commitments through the action plan, as well as I'm sure you could already see, all the accessible opportunities. I imagine people already thinking about how they could participate in this, how they could benefit that. How can you tap into that awareness campaign? How can you use these resources? These will be rolled out over the 3-year period. I encourage people to look at the action plan, look at that supporting action column, and start thinking about how you might get involved. There are also actions for the volunteering ecosystem and for the coalition of support. These are accessible opportunities for stakeholders across volunteering to get involved in the action plan, to make specific commitments through the guidance of the action plan, and to sign up to deliver those actions over time. So we mentioned the coalition of support. This is a network of groups that have made a public commitment to implement the national strategy and to help fulfill its vision. You can sign up today if you haven't already. We have, I believe, over 160 organisations currently, a wide network of supporters representing all types of volunteering across Australia. And the coalition of support will be an ongoing way for you to participate directly in the action plan and be part of it. Today, the action plan is launched, and this is a huge milestone in the national strategy for volunteering. But this is also complemented by other documents that provide more clarity, more information about the national strategy and the action plan itself. So these are the monitoring and evaluation framework, assessing the outcomes, the outputs of the national strategy and ensuring it has impact. The model for shared accountability, which talks about different roles and responsibilities within the national strategy, and the governance blueprint that talks about governance procedures and the role of the National Strategy for Volunteering Council. Thank you so much for being part of the action plan in the National Strategy for Volunteering. It is a set of 22 valuable priority key actions taking place through the national strategy across the volunteering ecosystem. But it's more than that. It's an opportunity to come together. It's an opportunity to be part of a national movement. It's an opportunity to work with your peers, to find common ground and to strengthen volunteering together. I'd like to thank you for being part of the national strategy. No matter who you are in volunteering, there's an opportunity going ahead to help realise the National Strategy's vision and to ensure that volunteering is the heart of Australian communities. Thank you.
Thanks, Zach. Don't go too far away. Friends, we're going to jump into a panel discussion now to talk a little bit about the action plan itself. You will have seen that there's a lot in there. Again, and I remind people on a regular basis, this strategy is your strategy. This action plan, it really belongs to you. These actions are your actions. Each of us has a part to play. Each of us can take responsibility for one or more actions within this action plan. It looks to the future. It provides a blueprint and a pathway over the course of the next 10 years to enable better volunteering, to create opportunities, to build bridges for inclusion, and hopefully to enable the achievement of aspiration that we all have for the tomorrow to come and all of the tomorrows thereafter. So if I might call to the stage Hamilton, the CEO of Volunteering SA and NT, Jerry from Justice Connect, and Zach, I'll welcome you back to the stage. We were going to have Chris D'Souza, this particularly attractive looking gentleman on the screen from the Department of Social Services. However, there were some flight troubles out of Canberra this morning. He wasn't able to make it. He sends his apologies, apparently 1,000 apologies, he tells me. I would like to think that it's more like 6 million for each volunteer in the country. But we're going to jump into a bit of a panel discussion. Zach has some things that were going to be said by Chris, so he'll read those, not necessarily as the department, but merely reflecting the things that Chris would have said. So perhaps with that in mind, I believe that each one of you is going to make a little statement around the action plan, around your engagement and involvement. So Jerry, perhaps.
Is this on? Yes, it is. Hi, I'm Jerry. Thank you so much for the invitation to speak today. I thought I'd just start with a little bit about Justice Connect. We're an accredited community legal centre and a charity, and our not-for-profit law program is a national service that provides free and low-cost legal assistance to community groups across Australia. And the aim of that is really about saving them time, money and resources so that they can do more good work in their communities. I guess our role in the National Strategy for Volunteering Action Plan this time around for the first 3 years is being the lead on Deliverable 6, which is about increasing volunteer involving organisations' understanding of their obligations to volunteers, specifically their legal obligations. And I think, as Zach pointed out, that really links to providing tools and resources, but it's about improving the volunteer experience ultimately. Our experience in this area, running a national legal service that works with community groups every day, is that we get lots and lots and lots of questions about managing volunteers and the different legal issues that can come up from what's the difference between an employee, a contractor and a volunteer, to how do I manage private information of volunteers, how do I manage volunteers during disasters, safety, risk, insurance, and the list goes on. And so to help organisations, we've developed a suite of resources and tools that are available on our website. And we also deliver some training, and that's been supported by the Department of Social Services funding over the last few years, which is fantastic. But really for us, the opportunity here is to support a really broad network of organisations and volunteer managers. We know that our resources have been used about 70,000 times so far over the last couple of years, but the impact that we can have by growing that reach and getting those tools and resources out there through the volunteer ecosystem will be massive. So really looking forward to that to come. Thank you.
Thanks, Jerry. Hamilton.
Thank you, Mark, and thank you everyone for joining us here today. A big shout out to the Minister. we're super lucky to be here in South Australia and having such a passionate minister. And so thank you very much. Thank you to Volunteering Australia. We've been part of this process as the volunteering peak body here in South Australia. And it's been such a wonderful process, a process which we really feel that we can copy. And one of perhaps a lovely example of that is that South Australia was one of the first states to have its own strategy for volunteering. And we've refreshed that strategy, or our State Department here has refreshed that strategy based on the national strategy, which will launch soon. And that's a terrific example of one of the actions of coming together and having a strategic alignment across volunteering, know that it is across the country. It doesn't stop at state borders and territory borders. And also a big shout out to Justice Connect. We work closely with you guys. And this is the wonderful thing about the strategy. It brings the ecosystem together. I've just found out that Jerry's based in South Australia, so we're going to reach out and see what that could look like as well. We're proud to be a part of the coalition of support, clearly, as with also the other the peak bodies around Australia as well. And also, we've got some ownership or some lead across, I think it's the number 7, 17 and 22. I've done my research. But more than that, our role is around actually supporting everyone else getting involved. How, as an ambassador, can we get everyone involved in sharing the stories, in participating, in supporting back to this national strategy, which we really want to be a part of. And the reflection, everyone that's in the room today and everyone that's online, is how can we be that sharing those stories, and how can we be the point of contact to make the national strategy even more a part of what we do. And reflecting on in the minister's remarks, it's about being more inclusive, it's about being more flexible, it's about sharing the stories, it's about the resources that we have. So bringing that all together in something that we can all be a part of. We're really, really proud to be part of the strategy. It's terrific. It's been launched here in a community centre in the heart of Adelaide. So really pleased. Excited that it maps a pathway forward, that we can all come together and share our experiences and our common learnings, and that can be iterative and we can develop over time as well. So big shout out to VA, thanks to the department, and look forward to everyone of seeing how we can be a part of the action plan and the strategy going forward.
Thanks so much, Hamilton. Zach, I might pass to you both with a voice of, Zach Reimers and also Chris D'Souza.
Yeah, I regret to inform you that I'm not Chris D'Souza, but Chris has passed on some notes to pass on his behalf. And so I want to highlight the fantastic engagement we've had from the Department of Social Services lately as well. Chris's notes say that the national strategy and the 3 action plan are crucial tools to help the volunteering sector to collectively navigate the changing volunteer landscape. The department is committed to supporting the 3-year action plan and will lead 4 actions under the plan and actively support 7 additional actions. This builds on the support the Australian government has provided Volunteering Australia with over $1 million to support the development and implementation of the National Strategy for Volunteering. The Department of Social Services will collaborate closely with other Australian government agencies, state and territory governments, Volunteering Australia, state and territory peaks, volunteer resource centres, and other stakeholders to develop innovative collective solutions to current challenges and to seize opportunities to create a thriving Australia through volunteering. Chris highlights the 4 actions that are being led by the Department of Social Services, which you may have seen before. There's the national advertising campaign to raise awareness for volunteering opportunities. The Australian government is investing $3 million on this campaign that will highlight the various ways in which young people can benefit by contributing their time and skills and the benefits that volunteering has in communities. The campaign is expected to roll out in late 2024. The department will lead the scoping and development of a whole of Australian approach to volunteering. This may include the creation of an interdepartmental forum to encourage collaboration, knowledge sharing, and improve the policy setting to create the conditions for volunteering to thrive. The department will encourage collaboration with states and territories to foster greater alignment between their volunteering strategies and the national strategy. The department is already a member of the cross-jurisdictional volunteering community of practice, and the best ways to approach collective challenges and opportunities are currently being scoped. The department will look at ways to better align the Australian government funding for volunteering with the National Strategy for Volunteering. So in addition to the 4 actions that are being led by the department will also assist with the implementation of 7 other actions. And like Hamilton, Chris has also done his homework and he's given the numbers of those actions for 3, 6, 7, 16, 17, 19, and 22. I regret that I cannot remember verbatim all those numbers. But for those who are accessing the action plan document, I'm sure you'll be able to look those up. And Chris highlights that these actions intersect with the Australian government's responsibilities and are funded through the Families and Communities Service Improvement Activity or the Volunteer Management Activity. To ensure that the department is engaged early and continuously with progress on the action plan, Chris D'Souza, General Manager, Communities Policy and Engagement Group, will become a member of the National Strategy Volunteering Council. And the department has built a strong relationship with Volunteering Australia. Being a member of the council will continue this close collaboration to deliver on department-led actions. The department is currently working with Volunteering Australia on the approach for continued coordination and monitoring of the national strategy to maximise collaboration and the impact of the 22 actions. So thank you very much to Chris for providing those notes. I think that's a fantastic summary of the department's involvement, intensive involvement in the action plan. And I'll switch over to National Strategy Director mode. Having
You have to stand up, turn around once.
That's right, yeah. Turn it off, turn it on again. No.
Okay. Did you want to speak specifically to anything that you haven't already covered, Zach, or?
Yeah, well, just my reflections on what I've just read out from Chris and the role of the department and the Australian government more broadly is that it's really fantastic to see the Department of Social Services and others, government agencies and departments using their role within volunteering. Because while volunteering as a general portfolio sits within the Department of Social Services, we know that volunteering impacts so many other areas. In fact, it could be argued pretty much every area of public service and of the government. And there are certain things that only government bodies have the power to do within that, and they're doing it. That's the great thing to see, that we can see through the actions, but also that it's a coming together. There's government bodies, there's peak bodies, there's others, and then there's this broad opportunity for people to get involved, from individual volunteers through to national charities that engage volunteers as part of their services. So another thing I'd highlight is that it's great to see the actions the department are leading set the stage for future action to build on top of that. Scoping a whole of Australian government approach to volunteering that will pave the way for other policy initiatives in time. So yeah, I'd like to thank everyone from the department team who's been working so close with us lately to push this through and to secure those commitments.
Thanks, Zach. I might just ask the panel a couple of questions, if I may, questions without notice perhaps. So we've spoken a lot with respect to this strategy and of course the development of the action plan, of the co-creation, the collaboration that's taken place and the co-design of the action plan in this case. I mean, obviously from the perspective of Volunteering Australia, we've seen the advantages of that, and hopefully for those who have participated, you've also seen the advantages of that. Perhaps I might ask the panel broadly, where do you see the advantages, not just in terms of this creation, because we have something now, but critically as we move forward, because we've all come together. This is an incredibly diverse ecosystem, and it hasn't really been brought together in the past in the way that the national strategy has brought it together. I think we have an opportunity. It's a moment in time, and we need to seize that. So moving forward, strengths of the collaboration, of the co-design process, of this ongoing dialogue that we have, how do you see that playing out?
I think it's just that it's collaboration. That's what we do in the community sector so well. And to also have the government participating in that collaboration, it brings us all together. We're all swimming in the same lane, and we ultimately increase the impact that we can have over the 10 years. So there is strength in numbers and coming together, and that's both at the systems level, but also at the grassroots level. So I think the collaboration point is really, really exciting.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks, Jerry.
And just on that, I mean, just looking at the networks that we are a part of here as a peak body, but as volunteering SANNT, and looking at reflection here in the room as well. It's about that ownership. It's about having the opportunity to be a part of something that's, you feel, bigger than just you individually. But I love that the strategy at the core of it has that we know that volunteers just want to give, and we know that we need to clear the way for volunteers to have that opportunity. And so this coming together, it's a wonderful opportunity for us to say that we're all a part of this. And at the core of that, it's about volunteers and how we can work together to have that light, I think, as we said, on the hill, and also ensure that we're sharing and working together and learning as we're going along as well. There's a great opportunity for us to look at the challenges that we face, and then how together we can overcome those challenges and have that little bit of ownership. We know that volunteers often shy away from any acknowledgement. This is a great way to actually every day have something at the heart of what we're doing. And then if organisations and individuals want to be a part of it, they can feel about being something special. I reflect on the time, and I've had the wonderful privilege to be at the Minister's Volunteer Awards that you won every year in your electorate, and hearing those stories. And so I love that we're a part as volunteering SANNT, as a part of an action that is sharing the stories, because those stories are so powerful, and we can learn from those stories, the good and the bad, and so that we can all here be a part of making volunteering truly for all, and a heart of reflecting it's the heart of communities. So I think its success is based on this co-design, the ongoing participation and the ownership of everyone.
Thanks, Hamilton. Zach, final word from you, perhaps, given you've been the director of the National Strategy and bringing to life this action plan.
So what I would say is that the action plan looks like volunteering. If we think about what volunteering looks like, the idea of volunteering is not owned by any one particular person. When you volunteer, you'll volunteer with different communities, different organizations over the course of your life, and you will bring people together through that connection, through you giving your time for the common good. And so the national strategy and the action plan reflect that. They reflect that the way that volunteering looks like in real life. There are people who step up, there are commitments made, there are opportunities that people are guided towards, there's a framework to participate in, but also people are making the decision themselves to participate. I think volunteering itself, while co-design is a term that we apply to things like documents and policies and initiative, we can also see volunteering itself as reflecting those same values. And these are common to volunteering, the national strategy, and to the action plan.
Thanks, Zach. I think with that in mind, you have a sense of not just the today, but all of the tomorrows to come, how you can be involved, where you can put your mark on volunteering for the future within this country, create opportunities, and hopefully achieve aspiration. So I guess with that in mind, what can you do? What can you do to be part of this? Well, I've got some ideas for you. Initially, download the action plan and the supporting documentation. Generally speaking, I'm not a big fan of having to read through reams of information, but this isn't reams of information. This is your voice. These are the things that you've brought to light on a national basis. It is the reflection of your concerns, but also your objective solutions to this thing we call volunteering and building community in this country. So download the action plan and the supporting documents. Join the Coalition of Support. Zach talked about the Coalition of Support. It's out there. Over 160 organisations are part of it at present. We'd like to see the number higher. And we encourage you to join the Coalition of Support. Start planning which supporting or ecosystem actions apply to your volunteering practice. These action plans talk to the next 3 years, but they also provide a basis and a foundation for the 3 years to come after that and thereafter again. And take action independently to help implement the national strategy. The national strategy has been out for over 12 months now. It's a living document. It's a living document because it gains its life through your actions, through the actions that you have. I'd like to thank the panelists for today. I'd certainly like to thank the Minister. Thank you so much for your ongoing support. I'd like to thank everyone in the room and near on 700 participants online and the broader volunteering ecosystem.